All right, and we're live. We're the story.
Welcome, everyone. Today, welcome to Dad's Night Out. Is that what we're calling this one?
That's right, sure, yeah. Dad's night out.
This
Went
is going
out,
to be,
got in some trouble.
I know, this is going to be a little different, guys. So buckle up. I don't know if it's going to be that different, but it's, yeah, what? This is our 10th one. So for that, we're doing Dads Don't Have to Watch a Kids movie this week. We get to watch a
Yeah,
movie we want to watch.
every once in a while, Dad gets to pick. So what we're going to talk about, we chose the original 1987, Paul
Yep.
Verhoeven's Rope.
And I think the idea when we were originally talking about this is going to be like Micah shows me a movie, and I think we'll do it vice versa. Because I until yesterday had never seen this, and so this is Micah showing me a movie he was very excited to select, and I kind of give you my off the cuff thoughts on that. And I think we'll probably do vice versa for our next one.
Yeah, sounds good. So what was so yeah, I grew up with this one. Like
Yeah.
somehow, I think maybe because my dad was a cop, it
Okay.
like snuck through the filter. I didn't see it in '87. I would have been seven
Yeah.
years old, and it would have
Sure.
been way too
Wildly
much.
inappropriate.
But
Yeah.
I definitely saw it like in middle school, I think, I think middle school,
Yeah.
and it was always a favorite. And then I had the comic books. So Frank Miller
Okay.
had this awesome run of, I think it was Frank Miller, of RoboCop comic books. And so I was drawing RoboCop at an early age. And then, like, they did this thing that these movies frequently did. And I guess I am disconnected a little bit to know if they still do it. But, like,
Yeah.
RoboCop, it's a hard R.
Hard R.
It's
Yeah.
like only a little bit of nudity, but like
Yeah.
a lot of violence,
Yeah.
really graphic.
Over the top cartoonish blood, which like wasn't like I was getting the vibes of like, all the boys and all the new stuff that they just go lean real heavily on the blood, but like that wasn't a thing as much in the 80s.
It was like so
Maybe it was. I mean, I was
in
3,
the
so
like slasher film
yeah,
world,
okay,
there
yeah,
was some extreme gore.
but
And you
no,
look
but
at
not
like
not not for an action flick like this. This
not the
kind of
action flicks,
had
but see,
yeah,
Paul Verhoeven's very special.
yeah, that's
He
true. This is Paul Verhoeven.
pushed it, right? And so, okay, so anyway, what I was saying, like, RoboCop is a hard R, really graphic, and then they somehow did this thing where they like turned it into kids' property,
Right, right.
or like a fan. So like RoboCop 2, RoboCop 3, like
Yep.
it started. I don't
There
know
was
if there's a
there was
RoboCop
a,
cartoon, but
there was a cartoon and there was a TV series. I know because when I went on the Roku to like look up RoboCop last night, there's like, oh, you can watch it for free on this one with ads, and so I clicked it and it took me to the series. I didn't realize it until I was like 20 minutes in. I'm like, this feels like really shitty production. And then I like went back and it was like, oh wait, this is the TV series. Which I didn't even
so
realize there was a TV series on it.
so
So,
it's really weird
yeah.
because like there's
Yeah.
nothing about that first movie that screams like let children watch
Kid
this.
series, yeah. I remember there was some RoboCop video games, and I remember the cyborg thing about the Terminators and the RoboCops. It was a thing at the time. And I was pretty into the Terminator series when I got older, and RoboCop was always kind of like the distant afterthought for me. But it was very of its time. It essentially felt like it kind of disappeared after having all this like merchandising and franchising that
Yeah.
went with it.
So it did all the merchandising, all the franchising, and then they just made a remake a few years ago with,
Yeah,
I'm blanking on his name, the actor.
it went over my head. I didn't.
And the problem, and I'm interested. So this is where I think we'll go is like your impressions of the movie and like what a strange place it fits into the market. Is the new RoboCop that came out? My recollection of it is that it took itself pretty seriously.
Okay.
This is like the tragic story of a guy and like wrestling with humanity, and it's like a legit action film, and we like have a lot of feelings involved and
Yep.
all that.
Yep.
And the thing with Paul Verhoeven is that he doesn't take it seriously, and
Yeah.
it like our RoboCop opens
Yep.
interestingly, like almost like Tropic Thunder, where it kind of just opens in media res. Like
Yeah.
you're in the world, you're consuming the
Yep.
media in this world,
Yeah.
and so it's a very media oriented movie. It
Yeah.
like comes
If
at you
anyone
with
doesn't know, Paul Verhoeven, Starship Troopers does the exact same thing, and it's like, oh, this is because I had seen Starship Troopers. I'm like, got it. This
yeah,
is a movie. It
and
does.
Total Recall,
Yep.
most notably, and the rest of his resume I'm not super familiar with offhand. But, and so in a way, it starts the way a lot of our Disney movies start, which is like we're laying out like here's the storybook opening up, right? And
Yeah.
so the storybook
Yeah.
in even in 1987, the storybook was daily news.
It's the same version of Beauty and the Beast doing the stained glass window, Moana doing here's all the monsters on the paintings.
Yeah.
But this is news reporters in the 80s talking about crime in Detroit, how it's really bad.
Right. Telling you the story, telling you the storybook. So that lays in the foundation where I was going to look at it this time, which I've never done before, as a fairy tale.
Yeah. You texted me that and I'm like, okay, I'm curious to hear where this goes.
So what do you think? What are your takeaways? So I showed you this movie and Kristen actually said, because we talked about like maybe we should live stream us watching it together. And Kristen was like, don't do that because you're just going to talk about the movie. Like, let Eric just see it. So before I come in and poison your impressions, take us away.
So yeah, I mean, I watched it last night, and it's a very 80s action movie. The over-the-top gore felt like a big... Well, okay, yeah, why? So the theme around the cyborg, what does it mean to be a man? It's a cop. He gets, his whole body shot off. A pretty ridiculous scene. And then they kind of revive him by making him this robot cop. Very corporate, big guys. They're the baddies in this one.
Big shoulder pads,
big giant skyscrapers, and the what else feels? I mean, the style, obviously the 80s dystopia look is a very pronounced thing, and it definitely does. It does that in a very like Back to the Future 2 does it.
I was just gonna say Back to the Future 2.
But it's like if there's the blood that should be there in Back to the Future 2, that's RoboCop. Yeah,
it's like roving gangs and things burning in the streets. And, wait, that's 2020. That's actually what's actually happening now.
There's lots of explosions. They're real heavy on the big explosions, special effects. His gun, he's got a pistol gun, but does a machine gun type thing. I remember, I'm sure if I was watching this as a 12-year-old, I would have thought that was pretty sweet. Yeah, but the theme of like wrestling with like what does it mean to be human with all this technology, with all this like big bucks money coming into just like things. That was a theme. It made me think of like, what are the dark movies back then that were doing that? What does it mean to be human? I guess Terminator was obviously doing that. Videodrome, technology, the way we interact with it. So I don't know. It was a refrain we were wrestling with back then.
Yeah, and aliens. And so one of the things that stands out is you've got Weyland Yutani, like the corporation in Aliens, and then you've got the OCP.
Yeah,
as the big corporate. So 80s was this like burgeoning. Corporations were like getting insanely, truly massive and coming to the forefront. And they were like very on the front of people's minds as far as like, this is happening everywhere, big and fast.
Yeah.
And so,
and very much the like scene where like he gets all of his arms and legs shot off, but he's still got one arm, and then he's like, no, cut his arm off because we want to have the robot the way we want, right? So, and right off the bat, it's like, we got all the money, we can do what he wants, he's our property now.
Right. Yeah, and so framing it like a fairy tale for me is you have the guardsman, like he's the king's guard or whatever. He's like a soldier, or like he's just like a guy. He's one of the king's men, and goes out into the woods and he gets waylaid by the villains and they kill him, and then they take him to the king's magicians and they bring him back to life and they resurrect him. But because they resurrected him, they think they own him. And so there's this like the privatization of Detroit, the privatization of the police force, and then the privatization of the person. We erased your identity We own you. So much so we'll chop off that arm because we're going to make the product we want. We're going to sell the product. And so the
Yeah.
king's magician rises up through, the courts in this big tower because he's made this amazing spell and he saved the city. And so he sends his, minion out there. And then the thing that ruins it is that RoboCop has a dream.
Yeah. That there's still a human somewhere in there.
There's still a human in there, and the sin that created him was so bad that it's etched this trauma into him. Like the thing that brings him out of it is remembering how he was murdered. And here's another thing I love about 80s movies is you can't blink. Like you can't look away.
Yeah.
Every line of dialogue is on purpose. And they don't spell it out for you. Movies today, like they spell every damn thing out for you.
Yeah.
There's like one little line in there where the guy talks about how he tweaked distribution of the cops to different locations, that he sent prime candidates to dangerous assignments. So, it opens with like Murphy shows up at his new precinct and he's Mr. Super Cop from like the rural district or whatever. And that one line tells us that he was put there on purpose, in the line of fire on purpose.
Yeah, it totally went over my head, but makes sense. I mean, the 80s movies were doing that all the time. You watch movies from that era, there is a lot of like, wait, hold on, I got to go back. I did that like 2 times doing this.
Yeah. And so they put him in harm's way in order to get him killed, in order to create the product that they needed to create, because the rivalry between the guy pushing Ed 209, which is the giant cybernetic or the giant robot that's like a T-Rex with guns.
Yep.
Who, interestingly, when they have their little fight in the bathroom, when they like have a conflict.
RoboCop?
No, when I forget his name, but the guy that authors the RoboCop program and the guy that's the number 2, Dick.
Yeah.
Of course, his name's Dick. When they have their little, like, no pun intended, pissing match in the bathroom, and they confront each other. And he's like, who cares if it works? We were going to be selling parts. We were going to be selling hardware upgrades. Like, so even in 1987, they're already talking about the planned obsolescence, the subscription model, like we're going to hook these guys on Ed 209s and we're just going to make bank for years. And it's like, so it's amazingly astute. So the King's man, he gets resurrected as this like super soldier, but he has a dream. He can't forget the sin committed against him, and he can't forget his wife and his kids. So like he can't forget that he's a father. His
family and his trauma are his links to his humanity.
Yeah. And so, anyway.
Yeah. It is kind of an aside too. I was going to say, 80s had a way of doing this like unsettling thing where like, and RoboCop definitely does this, it's like the stylized version of how they do it. It doesn't like, so the Ed 209, when he blows that guy away, gory scene in the movie. But it just feels so unsettling with this like claymation type robot, which was only seen in kids' films up to then, just being like aggressively violent and gory.
Yeah. Yeah, the little like stop motion toy.
Yep.
It's like and
stop motion toy just ripping this guy's life apart.
And that as soon as benign power is down, business meeting continues as usual.
Yeah. That was that like horrible thing happens. Business goes on as usual. Everyone just kind of continues pretending like this is normal.
His body's still smoking, and they're like talking about stock options and stuff like that.
Right.
And so again, commentary on like the inhumanity of these corporations, and then simultaneous commentary on like the degradation of American society. Like Detroit is just a cesspool.
Yep.
And that there are people that are benefiting immensely from driving it into that situation. So he figures out, he encounters like the redheaded guy doing a crime, and recognizes his face and his voice. And I think the thing he says to him is, so Murphy steps out of the car and he says the same things that he said to him when he was arresting him in the opening scene. And the guy like stares at him and he's like, is it you? And
there's the gas station thing.
Yeah, at the gas
Yeah.
station. Brings everything back.
Yep.
And again, awesome explosions. This is another thing from the 80s is like the laws changed about what kind of accelerants they could use
Oh,
for
that's interesting.
explosions. And so 80s and 90s explosions just look so much better because they had like super dangerous accelerants that they could use to make these like giant gasoline fire like plumes.
Yeah.
And so, there's a little like how the sausage is made for you. But so just awesome 80s explosions, big mushroom things that rise.
And it was like every street corner in this rundown version of Detroit just was getting destroyed in this movie.
Yeah. It's like the fires in the trash cans, which I always thought was a fake thing. And then like actually living in LA and going downtown, I was like, I saw it. I was like, oh no, that's totally real. You gotta put your fire somewhere. So he starts figuring out like, oh, there's something rotten about this existence. So he starts scratching at the surface and he goes into the records and he's going to go look up the records and they're like, you can't have access to information. You can't know the truth.
Well, okay. And that's where, do you want to do the reveal there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where he sees that, I forget the guy's name, the guy who's the head of the criminal group that killed him.
Yeah, Clarence Bodiger.
Bodiger. Bastard. He's hired by the company to like off guys that they want to get rid of. And
so the king not only owns the police,
right?
Not the king, but the king's like man, right? So
right,
number 2,
because the king is still the old man. He's in this. That's his name.
Benevolent. Yeah, the old man.
Yeah. He's kind of clueless, but like what is he? It doesn't feel like he's running the show. Like he's clearly neglecting the areas he should be like leading in, but he is making like the judgment call at the end when he fires the guy, which is
and so here's again where it's the fairy tale and the symbolism is that if he's sort of the top of the tower, he's the ossified structures of patriarchal power.
When he's running the kingdom, then
he's running the kingdom, and he's got slightly a blind eye. Some of his people that he's appointed.
It's a theme, right?
Yeah, and so the structure is corrupt because he's aged, he's neglected, it's maybe his responsibility or his stewardship, right? And so the strife that happens within is inevitable when the old man, they call him the old man, which is like what they call God or what we call our fathers, right? Like, so the old man in the sky. And so there he is. And we know he's like a decent guy.
Yeah.
As decent as you can be if you live in this silver tower. Because he cares when the guy gets shot.
Yeah. He does. So this is what I wrestle with right now. I'm thinking about like the pushback on that take, because within this world he's the caring guy, but he's also like kind of running this whole big corporate machine where all these dudes are doing these things.
He's like oh no, shark in the school of sharks.
That guy got shot. He's like the one guy who has a reaction. It's not as horrified as the audience is as it should be, right?
Yeah.
So he's still it's something. Which I don't know what the symbolism there is. Like the king just has to be slightly more than the rest of everyone else. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, in this totally distorted world he's in, he's at least not. He's not tyrannical.
Yeah, that's as we're talking. It's one thing I feel like you hold a good perspective on that because, and this is I think what we do a lot in our society and culture now is everyone just wants to look at like. Within this, because you're pointing out within the standards of that world, like he's more compassionate than everyone else. To everyone else, by like we operate like no one is compassionate. He's got like 2% more compassion than everyone else. Who cares? That's nothing, right? But within the society of that world, like that's who that character is and how he fits. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think so. And just the idea he's not the bad guy. And he's not inclined to side with the bad guy. He's inclined to side with the good guys. He's inclined. Right. He wants Detroit to do well. He.
Right. He's not trying to exploit everything for his gain purely. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
He happens to be at the top, and they obfuscate things from him, and
yeah,
partially necessarily so. If you're at the top, you cannot be granular in your
right,
understanding of
right.
everything beneath you, but also kind of protect the old man.
But he is
right?
turning into a blind eye to it. He's not paying attention
Yes,
to
he's
the
not paying
snakes
attention.
that are doing all the
Right.
things that
So
they're
if the
doing.
king were paying attention, none of this stuff would have happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Murphy would still have his left arm, and he would have gone home to his beautiful wife and his kids. And
Have his whole body.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, when they shoot him up at the beginning, it's like pretty awful. Pretty quickly you figure out like who the bad guys are, and obviously Clarence and his crew are awful. And so a lot like, another movie that this is like is High Plains Drifter. I think it's High Plains Drifter.
Don't know it.
No, don't want to give it away. The movie came out 40 years ago, so if you haven't seen it, it's your fault. But High Plains Drifter, this like gunslinger comes to town, and the town wants him desperately to get rid of the bandits that have taken over. And what we discover through the process of the movie is that this gunslinger, who's played by Clint Eastwood, is actually the resurrected ghost of the sheriff that they all conspired to murder. And he's come back to like clean up the town, but what he really does is completely destroy the town. He destroys the place. He makes like the town jester the mayor, and in taking out the villains, like the bandits, he also blows up the town and like all this stuff. And so so it feels a little reminiscent of that. Like you got these awful bandits, the cop resurrects and coming to kick ass. So the king, the old man, is getting a little senile. He's not paying attention to what's going on in his own castle. And so the King's Guard has to get to the bottom of this crime on his own.
This RoboCop, King's Guard.
Yep. And so he's the king's like loyal guardsman, right? Because he's a good cop. He's a good guy. And he's got these commands, which, his prime directives, which would be, it's cool they're codified on screen as like programming, but like they would have been, for the most part, his thing anyway, right? Like he's a good cop. He's going to protect the innocent. He's going to uphold the law, right? So when he's got Clarence Boddicker,
what are the three? It's protect the innocent, uphold the law. You know this. What are they?
Yeah, I remember the fourth one, but
the fourth one is the. Let me look at that. Directives.
What are the three prime directives?
Serve public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law.
Right. So that's the magic spell.
So the tangent I was going to take on this, because I was curious if they were going to go in the direction of like protect the innocent. Well, who's actually innocent here, right? Like who's complicit in the system, and does this turn into a French Revolution, everyone gets guillotined situation? Because when they had that, I was like, okay, I see how that could in a system so corrupt, who ultimately remains innocent. They don't really go that direction though, but that was kind of my like, all right, is that going to be where this goes?
Yeah, and I don't remember RoboCop 2 or 3, except that none of them were worth remembering. That's really what I remember about them.
Sure.
And maybe they went that direction, but in this one, there's the mystery fourth directive.
Yeah,
and it's part of the magic spell, right? When they brought him back, they cast this spell on him so that he was bound by certain rules. Not entirely unlike a golem, where it's a Kabbalistic resurrection ritual, or not resurrection because the thing's not dead, but you make a construct and you bring it to life with the and then it breaks its programming. Like, so that's the legend of the golem, is that it can't be controlled anymore.
Right.
So RoboCop is a little bit of this golem because he can be controlled. And so they can tell him what to do and where to go. And so they spring that trap on him where they try to kill him again, and the SWAT team comes out and they're hosing him with bullets. He gets all shot.
Yeah.
And
but the fourth directive, I don't know if we actually got to it there, because he goes to kill the number.
Well, he goes to arrest him.
He goes to arrest him, and then he says, okay, go ahead and arrest me. And then when he goes to do it, he totally malfunctions, because his fourth directive is
that he can't take any action against, what is it, a leadership of OCP?
OCP, yeah. Any action against the special people, you're not allowed to do.
Right, yeah. So he managed to put in an incantation that will keep him safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the power of this silver tower.
Yeah.
And, so all the wizards that live in there, they've made sure that their creation can't turn on them. And so he goes through. And so it's interesting from a story perspective, like you've already done one death and resurrection just to make your characters. How do you do another death and resurrection, which you need for your hero's journey? And so they figured it out. Everybody turns on him. He gets betrayed.
Yep.
He's getting shot up.
His own police are assigned to shoot the crap out of him, and he's severely broken down.
Yeah, all the king's horses and all the king's men all turn on him. And so they take him out, and then he escapes with the help of Officer Lewis, who, I mean, come on. He got killed because of Officer Lewis in the first place. Like time and time again, like Lewis kind of screws up. Like, So who is this like substandard cop that
she's effective in bringing him back to life, but she's not exactly working with him.
Yeah. So, because I guess she's the one who kind of seeded in him when he's walking by, and she calls him Murphy. Like that's the first. It's after he had his dream, though.
Well, it's after she has a dream. She chases him down, and she's like, "Something's up with you. I see the person in there,"
and gives him that first breadcrumb, which is the name Murphy. And so she shows up. She rescues him. They takes him away to that like steel plant or whatever. And so we kind of humanize. We humanize.
See, it's another parallel with Terminator. Cyborgs ending up at steel mills at the end of a movie to the big giant fight.
Yeah, they're extremely useful for cyborgs in gunfights. And so
exactly.
He take notice, if you own a steel mill, like make sure you've got your insurance.
Cyborg insurance.
It's so like 1987. Almost all the effects are in camera. Like Ed 209 is done with stop motion and rear projection.
Yeah.
All the guns and explosions are like real,
practical
blanks
effects
and squibs and pyrotechnics. Like no digital effects here.
Yeah, and all the blood is big, heavy blood packs on every shot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and Peter Weller is, I think it's worth saying, like his performance in terms of like his physical performance, like the way he like mimes all the robot stuff, like all they needed was a plastic suit and then sound effects in post, and like man,
totally
like he weighs 800 pounds and like he's full of servos. Like that must have been such an exhausting performance to maintain.
Yeah.
And then what did you think?
There's no like he's sprinting across the yard to catch up to a guy thing. He's just like robot plotting his way everywhere he goes.
Yeah, you really get the sense that like he's heavy and like making machined movements. And then what did you think of the part, again, because I'm too close to it, but when they take off his helmet and everything, how was that as a modern viewer watching?
The reveal and taking off his helmet? I mean, it didn't really strike me as like a, oh shit, this is a moment type thing. It was like, all right, that's the guy's face. And he's a robot.
But
now.
How did it look? Because like the way they have his skin stretched over like the metal. And
well, I guess it was the effect it was going for, but it's just like the skin of the dude's face without everything else robot. So like, I guess the impression it gives is that there's not much human actually left in there. Whereas I think like juxtapose that with the Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker reveal in Return of the Jedi, like that guy looks like he's human holding on. He's talking like that. Oh, this is just like, even like whenever the female cop, his partner, comes up to him and she keeps saying like, yeah, there's someone in there. Like my kind of reaction is like, like I see very little like there's a scene where he's going through his house and these memories are kind of coming up, but it feels like he's so almost all robot that like there's no emotion in anything. There's no look on his face in anything. I don't feel super bad for, like, I'm sad that he died, but it's like it feels like there's a shell of whatever person is still there.
Yeah. So they erred a little bit on the side of Well, but do you think that that's part of the performance, and that like as the show goes on, like once he starts doing all the battle with his helmet off, and
Yeah,
he's showing his face, like does he become a little more expressive and human as it goes along?
I do. I think within the story he does. It wasn't enough to make me feel
Oh, it wasn't
strongly towards
noticeable in the
him.
performance.
No, I mean, like in the performance, like I think the performance that he does so well is that he is so strongly robot, but there's not any like they're strongly robot, but there's a little moments of like emotion breaking through, right? But it's so small that it's just like, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess like that would be there. But the I think also partially it's just set up by him just like he's blasted away so much at the beginning. It's like there's nothing left. Like I don't like the I don't know, it was interesting.
Yeah, they got him good.
And like everything about it feels so cold, distant. Like he walks through his house, there's nothing on the walls. There's a TV explaining like all the cool products that are there. It just feels so cold that it doesn't feel like a place where it's like he's seeing this picture of his kids. He's flashing back to like
Yeah,
old memories. He's making out with his wife. But that's the style of the movie. Like,
yeah, and also what I thought was kind of cool about that is again, it's like the corporatization of
yeah,
everything,
yeah,
and that even the realtor is a machine.
yeah,
If you've shopped for houses lately and you've been on Redfin or anything like
yeah,
that, like the only thing that scene was missing was it happening through a browser
yeah.
with a
Or
virtual
your
tour.
iPhone.
Because like we do buy houses from machines now, like
Mm-hmm.
real, actual human realtors typically tour your house anymore. Like you have to specifically ask for that. Otherwise, you get a robot essentially telling you what the house is worth, with all the metrics, and you tour it. So like that was amazingly prescient. And
Right, and it's very effective in just showing how like the humanity's just been sucked out of everything within that world because the technology's
yeah,
taken its place.
yeah. So I wonder, again, talking about like the symbolism and the themes and everything, how much of it is like we are all RoboCop, like all of us are
Yeah,
having
yeah,
the humanity sucked out of us, and
yeah,
and the I buy that for $1, like this just awful brain dead show that
right,
everyone loves, and it's the number one show, and everyone is at it. It
yeah,
makes me
yeah.
think of like
It's a
Two and a
little,
Half Men or Big Bang Theory, where you're just like, oh my god, really? This is what people are watching?
yeah, yeah. It's a little. I mean, it's the '80s dystopian version of Idiocracy with more guns and explosions.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, maybe there's not a whole lot more to tell because it is a fairly straightforward
yeah, yeah,
movie.
yeah,
The dude that gets hit with the toxic waste and he comes stumbling out and the skin's melting off of him, like amazing makeup. Whoever did like his hands, because like the finger bones are sticking
oh yeah,
out, and like,
yeah.
oh my goodness, just amazing.
I mean, but just another like he's very like we need some like body horror looking gore here, like.
Yeah, yeah. And let's go for it.
But well, but he's not. He's all messed up, and then he gets hit by the car, and his body just explodes,
It
like
pops.
by his boss. That guy's death. They just like because he gets his ass kicked a bunch of different times, and then he ends up in the toxic waste, and then he's all
Yeah.
disfigured, and he just keeps suffering through until his boss hits
Oh
him with a
yeah.
car, and he explodes.
Yeah. And he gets
Which
hit
was
and
again
pops like a
a
water balloon.
very easy thing to do with all of it, just like
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and again, in a little bit like the Western format of getting revenge on the guys that got you, like
yeah,
everybody gets
yeah,
a pretty intense
yeah.
comeuppance, right?
Villain
So the
comeuppance. There's definitely that
yeah,
going here too. And what I
yes,
also think too, like so if we're doing villain comeuppance and the symbolism there, it's certainly got the thing your company created, the thing you've created is also the thing that comes back to bite you in the end. Like this robot, let's suck the humanity out of it, but you let the lift of humanity left in there just to come back and throw off your whole plan.
yeah, and so the soldier, the King's man, is he's got the prime directives written on his heart. We know he's a good cop. We know he's a good dad. We know he's a good husband. Like, so there's like this good man, and he's
Hmm.
committed to justice.
Yeah.
And so he comes back, and so in a way, it's like the human spirit and the spirit of justice is so powerful. It continues beyond death, and it perseveres beyond betrayal. And the last thing it has is that it's still a slave to this incantation. Right?
Yeah.
He's still bound by the spell that won't let him mete out justice. And so he ascends the tower and he faces down the bad guy. The fantastic trope of like using the guy's words against him. He's got the recording of what he said, which is a power that they gave him. So they gave him the power to record things live. Because in the 80s, we didn't all have that power. Now we all have that power. But
he's wearing a Google Glass, so he's able to record it. Got it. Yeah.
He said, Siri, turn on video camera. And so he plays it. The man's own words are used against him. The truth comes out, right? So the eyes of the old man are opened, and the old man figures out how to break the incantation. Only one person in the whole company can do it. Because we know that Dick is number 2. Like they say it numerous times. Like he's number 2. And so there's one person in the whole kingdom that can undo the spell. Yeah. And so, great twist, that great moment where
you're fired. Yeah. And then he gets shot through the edge of the tower and falls down like Hans Gruber at the end of Die Hard to his death.
Except like his arms are all weirdly long, whatever the optics on the little model or something. Like the Hans Gruber death is way better.
Oh no, it's definitely, but it's the villain falling off the skyscraper at the end is certainly, that was a thing. It was the big long fall, right? Yeah.
Plummeting to your death. And I think, Ed 209 is still down there burning, so his creation is down there. So you fall off, into the pit. You fall into hell. Like that's what's
interesting juxtaposition between Ed 209 and RoboCop. One is pure just droid robot. The other has a little bit of humanity in it, and their personalities are very different as a result.
Yeah. And, so my dad was a cop, and I used to talk about how there's, two kinds of cops out there.
Yeah.
And one is the ones that they just want to enforce rules. They just live to enforce the rules and write tickets and get you in trouble.
Yep.
And enforce rules. And, I'm sure that they're keeping you safe, but it manifests to me anyway as like fucking nitpicking me about the rules.
Letter of the law, you did the thing,
there's
right?
No mercy. Exactly. Letter of the law. And mercy is out the window. It's all justice.
That's where I thought RoboCop was going to go. Is like, all right, he's got these directives, but it's all very like, unless there's a spirit of the law thing in there, then like wherever you draw the line, that's going to backfire on you because you're going to find the cases where it doesn't quite fit, and then it's going to turn to chaos. Yeah.
And so Ed 209 is the embodiment of like no mercy, all justice.
Yeah.
So that when he makes a mistake on the side of like filling you full of lead.
Yeah.
And then RoboCop, because there's a human in there, there's that spirit. So then the other kind of cops are the cops that like to chase bad guys. And so, temperamentally that works out with, the more like, what is it, the SP, Myers-Briggs temperament type.
Got it.
Likes to chase bad guys. And really it's like they're just criminals who wound up being cops instead of being criminals.
Sure.
They're playing cops and robbers with their friends. And in America today, it's catch and release, right? So it's all fun. You catch the bad guy and the DA lets him out the next day. So you get to chase him again. So if you're that kind of cop, it's like, hey, this is great. And if you're the other kind of cop, you're so anyway, So RoboCop he's got the spirit of justice alive in him. I don't know that we got to really see the spirit of the law thing happen in the movie.
Yeah.
Because he's still pretty hardline about...
It's surprisingly absent, the spirit of the law thing in there. Like, it's... But, I mean, if you're going for, like, the life's just been sucked out of everything, including the police, that's why we're having robots do it now, like, thematically it works.
Yeah. So villain comeuppance, he gets fired, he gets killed. The guy who makes RoboCop is betrayed and murdered by Dick.
Yeah.
And so he gets a comeuppance because I think we get to see his motivations were just
So
as crooked as.
just as crooked and greedy. Just he saw an opportunity and jumps in there, and then
And what he wants is cocaine and threesomes,
and the
so
same
he gets
villain
killed.
who's hired by Dick comes in and takes him out.
Yeah, 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 I think that's it. That's the fairy tale. Once upon a time, one of the king's men
And they
was
lived happily
betrayed.
ever after.
Yeah, and then at the end, it lives heavily. He's like, "What's your name, officer?" And he's like, "Murphy." And so we see like, oh, the man lives on, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. What happens after that? Does he go back to his wife and kids and live happily ever
We
after
don't
his
know,
family?
right? Because what does Lewis say? Well, she moved on.
Yeah.
She thought you were dead. So we don't know. And again, I don't remember RoboCop 2 and 3. Like, you'd think that'd be where they kind of wanted to go, is like
Yeah.
continue that. But yeah. So that's RoboCop.
Yeah, no, I mean it's fun. It's definitely like if you're looking for like a fun it's like there's so much stuff of the 80s that just feels very put in there. Like it's a good timepiece.
It's a timepiece, and what's interesting about it? Like, this is not a movie. Like, my wife did not really enjoy it, and there were a lot of places where she just hid her head
Yeah,
and was like,
my
"Tell
wife
me when the
wouldn't want
scene's
to
over."
see it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so like it's not a great date movie,
No.
but it harkens from an era when they used to make movies like that.
Date movies?
Well, specifically not date movies. I feel like almost every movie now it's sanitized enough that just about anybody can watch it.
Yeah, right.
There's a few notable exceptions, like The Boys is a show that I really don't see being like, they're not chasing all four quadrants.
I mean, if
of
they're
the
doing like a
market share.
horror genre movie or whatever, like that's not like they're gonna do like a gore thing. But it does feel like when they're doing it, like they're leaning into it, right? And this
They're
is
leaning
definitely
into it.
like because I can't think of any, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of any other like action movies in the eras of like your Lethal Weapons and Bad Boys and what other big action franchises are there during all this, like they just go like hard R gore.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's very Paul Verhoeven too. He does it again in Starship Troopers.
Yeah. And he likes the
Yeah.
body horror stuff because he does it
Yeah.
in Total Recall, like when he's pulling the thing out of his nose and like,
Yeah.
their faces are popping in the vacuum. And so he likes some of that stuff, which is a little bit like Nicholas Winding Refn.
Which was it?
And Guillermo del Toro, they both, in their live action movies, there's always some abject horror of personal injury or extremely, graphic.
Tarantino does a bit of the blood, big heavy blood too. It's a kind of different style, but yeah.
And usually not gratuitously. Like usually it's like one thing or two things,
right, yeah.
like.
But it's not throughout the movie. You're just buckets of blood throughout, but it's like in this one or two spots, like holy crap, like that was, and it shocks you when it does that because you're not in. Especially that's why like the claymation style robot, it just feels so unsettling because it's like it's so much and it's so heavy and it feels so out of place from like this very kiddie way of going about it.
Yeah. So don't let your kids watch this one.
Nope, not a one to show your kids.
Not one to show your kids. When they say "are," they mean it, and also probably you're not gonna like sit down with your significant other and watch it and have like a nice date night. Save this one for the boys.
It's a dude's movie for sure.
This is dad moves.
Yeah, but I do think like as a timepiece, I think it gives a good it gives a good instinct into like where society, like our head was at in the 80s, like what we're concerned about corporatism, we're concerned about privatization of everything, our interaction with technology and how human are we actually, like it's got all these big themes that are like very present in like many other famous movies around that. They're all kind of crammed into this one.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that they were projecting we're living into. And so
totally.
So on the one hand, they were totally right. and on the other hand, like we're still going, we're still
Yeah.
fine
No, well,
for the most part.
that's the interesting thing about all the stuff, like when they were, because for me it was like at that time they were first starting to wrestle with this idea of we are becoming one with our technology, and it is coming into every part of our lives, and what does it mean to do that? And this was kind of the impression of how it was in the 80s, and in some ways that's really panned out, in some ways it's not quite that, but it's a little different. Like, it's a really good movie to look back on in through the lens of like how are they viewing technology and what this means and where is it going from, was it 40, almost 42, what, 50 years later? My math's bad.
Yeah, 40,
many
30,
many decades later. 43 years
37,
later.
37 years later.
37 years later. So yeah, it's I like looking at these flicks through that lens.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm stoked. We'll figure out what the next Dad's Night Out is when we get there. But the next movie, what are we doing next?
I don't think we've said a Disney one yet. What do you? I mean,
I think we talked about Beauty and the Beast next.
We got to do Beauty and the Beast. That one's so deep and so core to so many things. Yeah. I think we're
and of course we mean the animated one.
Oh yeah, no. Right. Unless there's a striking demand for live action in juxtaposition, we're probably.
I mean, sooner or later, if we're gonna fill out the canon, we'll get there eventually.
I mean, when we're wildly successful doing these, and everyone's clamoring to see every bit of insight we have about that.
I don't know if I'm committed to getting to the live action ones, but we'll see.
We'll see.
All right, dude.
Thanks, Micah. You have a good one.
Yep. Cheers.
Bye.